On today's installment of Big Al's Garage, my top 10 classic cars of the 70s. Can you dig it? How y'all doing? I'm Big Al. Welcome to the garage. Today we are counting down the top 10 classic cars of the 70s. Yes, you heard me right, the 70s. The decade that was known for the Watergate scandal, disco, stagflation, and gave us some memorable cars that were memorable for the wrong reason. Ford Pinto, I'm looking at you. Yes, the Pinto gave new meaning to the term hot hatch. The 70s, while the 60s were a decade of unbridled muscle car performance, when the car companies would sell you a rocket ship on wheels, the 70s saw the gas crisis hit in '73, along with ever-tightening safety and emission controls. Combine that with a spike in insurance premiums for performance cars, and by middle of the decade, the party was over. But still, there were some far-out cars that came out of this decade. Can you dig it? Let's get to the list. Number 10, the AMC Pacer. Now, I don't know what the folks at AMC were smoking when they came up with this thing. It looks like an upside-down fishbowl on wheels, but it's garnered quite a cult following. I'm sure people can easily say the same thing about the Corvair, so I'm a fine one to talk. Manufactured from 1975 to 79, featured a 3.8-liter i6 engine, or some models featured V8s, and it was featured as the vehicle of Garth Adger in the film Wayne's World. In fact, that's how most of my generation even know the Pacer exists. This car has definitely earned its place in the pantheon of classic cars, or perhaps more appropriately, cult classics. Number 9, the 9th generation Cadillac Eldorado. While the 60s were all about muscle car performance, the 70s saw a lot of underpowered, gigantic land yacht cars. While Chrysler was busily paying Ricardo Montalban to hawk Corinthian leather, GM was building this large gunboat of a car. Built from 1971 to 1979, it featured a 500 cubic inch V8, or a 425 V8, depending on the year. While that may sound impressive, these engines were detuned and largely emission restricted and wheezed out very little horsepower. But the Cadillac Eldorado just has that iconic 70s styling. If you wanted to look like a pimp or a mob boss, this is the car for you. In fact, with the latter, I mean, if you look at the trunk, how many bodies can you fit in that thing? No wonder the Mafia liked them so much. This is the perfect car for rolling up to Studio 54 in New York City, and will definitely turn some heads at car shows. And if you wanted to up the power, you could easily drop an LS into one of these things. After all, isn't LS always the answer? Number 8, the Fiat X19. Produced from 1972 to 1989, at some point production moved from Fiat to Bertone. Featured a 1290cc four-cylinder engine. It's said that only 1,034 are left on the road in North America. So these cars are quite rare. However, models from overseas are now legal to import under the 25-year rule. This car was also featured in the film Silver Streak. At the very end, Richard Pryor is seen driving off in a yellow one. Number 7, the Di Tommaso Pantera. This car was sometimes known as the redneck supercar. It was manufactured from 1971 to 1992, but only imported to 1975. They are now all legal, however, to import under the 25-year import rule. Featured a 351 cubic inch Ford Cleveland V8 initially. At other points, other engines were used. These cars are definitely iconic of the 70s. I am not entirely sure of the market, but they are definitely icons of the decade. Number 6. The Porsche 928. Manufactured from 1977 to 1995, this front-engine V8 powered, water-cooled car was conceived as a replacement for the aging 911. It was somewhat dismissed by Porsche purists because, as mentioned previously, it was front-engined and water-cooled, and prices still remain a bit low to this day, so you can snap these up. It was featured in the film Scarface, also driven by none other than Tony Montana. The fact that the 911 is still in production and the 928 is gone kind of tells you something about the short-sightedness of Porsche's plans. But anyway, these cars are true underrated classics. Number 5. The Pontiac Trans Am. Manufactured from 1970 to 1981, numerous V8 engines were used over the production run, and this car is perhaps most known for its appearance in the film Smokey and the Bandit. Perfect car to drive in Texarkana to get some beer and bringing it back to Atlanta. Black one with the film helped sell this car quite a bit and make it popular. If you do take one to a car show, expect to be asked to help smuggle beer. Trans Am owners get that about as much as us Corvair owners get asked about Ralph Nader. Moving on. Number 4. The Buick GSX. Built from 1970 to 1972, featured a 455 cubic inch V8. And only a small number of them were ever produced. So these cars are quite rare, were very high performance, and you thought Buick only made boring grandpa cars. That wasn't always the case. These cars are true classics and expect to pay a premium for one if you do find one in good condition. Number 3. The AMC Javelin. This was AMC's entry into the pony car market and one of the coolest cars that American Motors ever built. Manufactured from 1968 to 1974, it was available with AMC's unkillable inline 6 and several V8s up to 401 cubic inches. As a side note, it was also the first pony car ever adapted for police use, as the Alabama Highway Patrol bought a batch of these and used them for pursuit vehicles. They also produced the AMX 2-seat, more powerful variant. There's not a lot of these left, so expect to pay good money for a good example. Number 2. The Dodge Challenger, the original and best. Produced from 1970 to 1974, you could get it with a slant 6 or several V8s up to 440 cubic inches. The Challenger is perhaps most famous for the role it played in one of my favorite films, Vanishing Point, featuring Barry Newman, trying to drive one from Denver to San Francisco in an insane amount of time. Great movie, definitely check it out. And a great car. You've got to love the styling, and just typifies Mopar performance. And now, coming in at number 1, yet another Mopar, a vehicle that makes it into the 70s by the skin of its teeth, the Plymouth Superbird, produced in 1970 only, driven by Richard Petty. In fact, the car was conceived as a way of luring him back to Chrysler. It was built specifically for NASCAR, and then they sold them to the public because, obviously, any car in NASCAR had to be a car generally available to the public. However, the Superbird was done to death by increasing emission standards and then NASCAR banning the aero cars. These were some of the coolest cars to ever round a NASCAR track. They were taken up to almost 200, in fact, I think they broke 200 miles an hour on the Bonneville Salt Flats. And expect to pay good money for a good example. These are some of the rarest cars of the 70s. Anyway, that's all. I hope you agree with my picks, and please like, share, and subscribe.